We've come out to Jackson Park, one of more than 150 parks in the Milwaukee County Park System, most of them open year-round for public recreation. In just a few minutes, Emmy Fink gets a log rolling lesson on Lake Wingra in Madison. And then Deb Wolniak gets some tips for grilling fish and game from DNR biologist Tim Lazat.
Oh, Tim, this is unbelievable.
But first, we'll visit Mastodon Valley Farm in Richland County, where Peter Allen is working to restore his land through sustainable agriculture. I'm Dan Small, and it's time once again for Outdoor Wisconsin.
Summer to fall, winter to spring, from Green Bay to where the St. Croix sings, from Catamaran to Superior Shore. Outdoor Wisconsin, outdoor Wisconsin.
Until recently, Peter Allen taught ecology and systems theory at UW-Madison, but he decided to put his knowledge into practice, so now he and his wife Maureen are managing their 200-acre farm in Richland County for ecological diversity. In a sense, they're recreating a savanna landscape once maintained by mastodons, a landscape of oak groves and lush grasslands, and one that can produce an abundance and variety of food. We've come out to Mastodon Valley Farm near Viola, Wisconsin today, and I'm talking with Peter Allen, who is turning this place into really a sustainable agriculture project. Peter, tell us a little bit about your project here.
Yeah, so this is our farm, Mastodon Valley Farm. We've got about 220 acres here. When we first bought the property, it was conventionally grazed and conventionally cropped. And our goal is to restore the native ecosystems that were once here for long periods of time in the past. So I was a restoration ecologist at the University of Wisconsin, and the kind of typical way you restore landscapes is to sort of pick out the species that you think belong there, the natives, and the ones that don't belong there, the ones that aren't necessarily native. And that doesn't always work very well on a large scale. And when we've got massive ecological degradation across the planet, we need to have ecological restoration strategies that can scale. And so our strategy here is to restore our native oak savannas in a way that is economically viable. So we run a farm here that sells meat, primarily beef, pork, lamb, and poultry. And we rotate our animals in ways that mimic the way that the megafauna and the large animals that all went extinct 12,000 years ago, but that were here for 30 million years, eating the vegetation here, maintaining open savanna landscapes. When they all went extinct, the forests grew up, and now we've got to tame the forest by bringing animals back in, and we do that in a way that is both restoring the native vegetation, but also providing a livelihood for our family.
Now behind us is a cabin you built. You and your wife live there.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yep, so when we were looking for land, we had a choice. We could either buy a smaller piece of land that had a house and a barn and infrastructure already present, or we could buy a little bit more land without anything. And so we kind of chose that latter option. We built a tent our first year here and then lived there, and while we built this cabin, we cut down a bunch of the pine trees and milled them out and built a little post and beam cabin. So we're off-grid solar array that gives us a little bit of electricity, and then rainwater collection for our water.
Well, let's have a little tour of your farm if you don't mind.
Okay, let's go check it out.
Well, Peter, what's going on here?
So this is the spot where we overwintered our sheep last year. So, we'd bring them a bale of hay every couple of days, and this really built up, 6 inches of solid waste hay.
Yeah.
And it covers the ground, it keeps oxygen out, it holds water in. It's not great a situation, it needs to be cleaned up. So we brought the pigs in, and so we had 12 pigs in here for 2 weeks, and they just churned it up. They picked up the hay, they got into the mud and wallowed around, and they kind of evenly mixed the hay into the underlying soil. And now it's completely open, so now we can come in and seed. I think we're going to do sweet corn here for our family. So this will be our sweet corn patch. It's well fertilized, and now it's got a nice mulch layer, so there won't be any weeds. So it'll just be perfect sweet corn patch.
That's great. It looks like you tilled it.
Yep.
Pigs are natural tillers then, I guess.
Their noses are shaped exactly like a moldboard plow.
Well, Peter, these guys look as happy as pigs in mud.
They sure are. And it being midday and pretty warm, they enjoy getting cool by digging a little spot in the ground and getting down where it's nice and wet and cool. They flip their water over to make a little wallow and lay down. And we're actually using them here to prep ground for where we're going to plant corn. So these guys eat corn and wheat and soybeans as a feed ration to supplement the pasture, and that's fairly expensive. So in the last few years we've been experimenting with growing some of our own grains. So what we do is we feed cows hay bales out here, and you can see where the hay bales on the ground kind of scattered out, and they're kind of suppressing the sod, and then we bring the pigs in and churn it all up, mix it up kind of like where we were just at, and then we'll come in and I'll broadcast corn seed right on the ground. And then what I'll do is I'll yell and call the cows over and have them run back and forth across here. I'll have them chase me with a bucket of grain. I'll go back and forth, and they'll go back and forth, and they'll push all those seeds right into the ground. And we did it for the first time last year, and it worked beautifully, and we got just a beautiful crop of corn. So that was on about a quarter acre. We're doing a full acre here this year, and that will be feed for these pigs then in the late summer. On this fence line here, we have the hillside coming down. On the uphill side has always been pasture. On the downhill side, this field has always been cropped. Up until just a couple years ago, they did tobacco way back in the 1800s, then wheat, and then corn up until recently. And you can see how it drops off 3 feet just on the other side of that fence. And that is all the soil that has washed off every time they've plowed and cultivated, and then it rains and the soil washes away. So when we got here, this soil was in really, really bad shape. It hardly grew anything, and there was no topsoil left. It was all just sand subsoil. So we immediately brought the animals in, fed some hay. We planted about 30 different species of native prairie grasses and flowers, and then a bunch of trees in rows. And then we ran chickens through here behind them. And now, just 2 years later, this is some of the best forage we have on the farm, right where we ran the chickens through. And by rapidly moving animals through quickly, we can start to rebuild that soil. Anywhere from a quarter to an inch of soil per year, we can build back up. So my goal is to bury this fence before I die.
Now these old trees, they've been here a while, haven't they?
These are ancient trees, old growth, upwards of 200 years or plus. They're open grown trees, so they grew out in the sunlight, not in a closed forest. Trees in a forest grow straight up to get to the light. When it's open grown and there's grass around them, they grow out. And so you see these limbs that are outstretched. Sometimes these oaks can have limbs 30 feet out in either direction, 60-foot diameter around the crown. And when they grow widespread like this, they actually produce upwards of 20 to 30 times more nuts than trees growing in a forest, because they get so much more light.
Peter, this is really lush, and a lot of plants I admittedly don't recognize.
This is the area that we planted, turned it with native prairie grasses and flowers, right when we took it out of corn. So it was in corn, we took it out, and we immediately planted about 25 species of grasses and flowers, and then we planted about a dozen species of trees, about 2,000 trees totals in rows on contour through the field. And between what we planted and what's come in naturally, we've got over 120 species of plants in this field right now.
So you're grazing this, right?
Absolutely. So like I said, we planted these rows of trees every 30 feet or so through this field. And so now we graze the alleys between them with all of this lush vegetation here. One of these alleys is about a half an acre, and it's about 2 to 3 days worth of food for them. And we've got them moving through each alley every couple days, and we're keeping them in with this electro net here.
Peter, you're doing a lot with this farm, but why did you choose this particular property?
Well, we looked at a lot of properties. We spent 2 years looking. We looked at over 100 properties in this area. We really like this area in particular around the Kickapoo River, so we kind of zoomed in here. But we basically had 3 main criteria. We had homestead. We knew we were going to build a house, so we had to have a good spot to build a house. I had to have a good house site. The number 2 criteria was it had to be farmable. We wanted to make our living on the land, so we had to be able to graze cattle. You need to have some grass ready to go because we already had cattle. You need to have some fencing ready to go. And then the other big criteria as an ecologist, I wanted to have as many sort of representative ecosystem types in the driftless area here in one property. So when I first found this property, the fact that it's got clay soil, ridge top fields, it's got steep slopes on facing every direction, it's got nice fertile valley pastures, it's got a spring, a pond, a trout stream, a wetland, literally every major ecosystem type in this whole region is represented within just 100 acres right here. So it really gives us a chance to test strategies in different places for doing this kind of restoration work in an agricultural way.
And why are you doing all this? I mean, you could have a nice I
could be a professor right now.
Teaching job at a university, sure.
Yeah. This is a lot more fun. And I like being outside.
We'll tell you how to learn more about Mastodon Valley Farm later in the show. Back in the logging era, more than a century ago, lumberjacks cut down Wisconsin's northern forests and floated big pine logs down our rivers to sawmills in towns like Eau Claire and Chippewa Falls. The loggers worked hard, but they played hard too, and one of their games developed into the sport of log rolling, which is still practiced today. Emmy Fink went to Lake Wingra in Madison to learn more about this sport and found out it's as easy as falling off a log.
Yeah, the sport of log rolling began over 150 years ago when the lumberjacks, the bravest of the lumberjacks, were called river pickers. And when they cut down the timber, when they were logging, the easiest way to move that timber from where they cut it down to the sawmill was to float it through the river. So these river pickers would stand on the logs and steer the logs down the river to the sawmill, trying to break up log jams in the river bends. They had the most dangerous job because if they fell in, they'd either get crushed by the logs or they would freeze to death. So they were considered the bravest of all the lumberjacks. And at the end of the season, the lumberjacks would get together and they'd have a big competition. So the choppers would chop, the sawyers would saw, and the river pickers would do a sport called burling, which is what we call log rolling now. So the sport began 150 years ago, and now it's a bunch of athletes who are not going to die if we fall off the log that are representing what those lumberjacks did so long ago. So we're really carrying on a true Wisconsin and northern tradition. I fell in love with log rolling at our local YMCA. Believe it or not, we have programs all over the US and Canada at camps and YMCAs and pools and lakes, and mostly for kids. And I signed up at the YMCA. I was taking swimming lessons. I thought it looked like fun. And I fell in love with it. It was unique. It was challenging. I started going to competitions and met such a cool group of people. And just like anybody else who tries it, I really caught the bug and decided that was my sport.
You can't touch your opponent. But other than that, anything else is allowed. You're allowed to rock.
Madison is the best place for it. We had it at the YMCA, and then what I did with a counterpart of mine, Olivia, when we got a little bit older, we wanted to bring it outside. We only had it indoors in the pool, and log rolling's meant to be done outside. So we came to Wingra Boats here at Wingra Park, and we said, can we start a little program? We had one class a week, only like 4 log rollers. Next thing we knew, it exploded. Exactly what you said. Madison loves outdoor activities. They love unique activities. They love challenging things, but also fun things. So our classes grew. We were hosting birthday parties and camps and corporate get-togethers. So we actually had to form a business, Madison Log Rolling. And now we get over 300 people on the logs every summer here at the lake because people love it. Every single person who tries it becomes addicted.
An amazing workout, whether you're going by yourself and trying to roll for time, just getting some practice on those smaller logs. They spin really, really fast, so it's a really great cardio workout, really great leg workout, and then for your core as well for balancing on that log. Yeah, it's a really fun time. You have people of all ages, really, really young kids, all the way from 2 to 3 years old, and then adults as well. So really people of all ages can come, give it a try, have a lot of fun. Like you said, it's really no shame when you're getting started. You can fall back off, hop right back on, and we all have a lot of fun together.
If you go to madisonlogrolling.com, it's got our full class schedule. People can set up private lessons if they have family in town and just want to get together and have a really unique Wisconsin experience.
Okay.
We have a big competition on July 1st and 2nd, the Midwest Log Rolling Championships here at Wingra Park. So lots of opportunities to give it a try. A lot of tips for first timers. First of all, just have fun. It's
Okay.
not going to go well. Nobody does well on their first time log rolling. The second is really, really fast feet. The third is eyes always stay on the end of the log. That really helps your balance.
Okay.
And fourth, don't actually try to spin the log. It's going to roll on its own. When people think of log rolling, they think of people pulling, spinning. And we do that in competition, but when you're first learning, it's more figuring out how to use your core and how to keep your balance over the top of the log. And another really important thing to note is it's a completely safe sport. I get so many people saying, I don't want to do it, I don't want to lose my teeth, I don't want to get a concussion. I have been doing this for 30 years and I have never seen anyone hit their head.
Wow.
The worst injury we've had is somebody bruising their shin, and that happens every once in a while. We don't have very sexy legs. But other than that, it's a really safe sport because with the log bouncing in water, it's very low impact. It's a very great cardiovascular activity. And when you fall, you just land in the water, splash, and get back on again.
I'm a little nervous, but I'm very excited to try this. I know I'm in good hands.
You have nothing to be nervous about. You're gonna have so much fun. When we get out there, you're gonna get in a log, your eyes look at the end of the log, you're gonna
Okay.
move your feet as fast as you can,
Okay.
then you're gonna fall in and get wet.
All right.
It'll be awesome. Let's go.
I'm hoping for 1 solid second.
1 second is the goal today, folks.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. Now you know what you're doing. Yeah. Ready? Pop it up. Eyes on the end. Okay,
There you go. There you go. Good job with the fast feet. 2.5 seconds. 2.5. Not bad. 2 seconds. Yeah, here we go. Longer to be on there. Keep fast. Good. 3.5 seconds. Good job. Nice. 4 seconds and up and down, Ready? Back. Go. The other side. Go. Now that time you don't really think backwards. That's go fast. That's good. Bring it forward. Good. Fast. 1.5. Nice. Good. 3 seconds. Oh, not bad.
Yeah, I feel that.
Good job.
Thank you so much. They wanted 5 seconds out of me. They got 3.5. I am coming back to try this. I see why they say it's addicting. I can do better. I will get 5 the next time. You guys come on out here to Wingra Boats in Madison and give it a try. Dan, you too. I think you're gonna like this.
Thanks, Emmy. You know, I enjoy watching log rolling, but whenever I'm around a body of water, I want to be fishing. Many anglers practice catch and release these days, but there's nothing wrong with keeping a few fish to eat now and then. And grilling is a great way to prepare fish and game for the table. Deb Wolniak got some fish and game grilling tips at the Horicon Marsh Visitor and Education Center from DNR biologist Tim Lazat.
My name's Tim Lazat. I'm the Wisconsin DNR's Public Land Specialist for the Bureau of Wildlife Management. And today we're at the Horicon Marsh State Wildlife Area and Educational Nature Center. And we're going to be doing a short demo on grilling wild game. We're going to teach people how to prepare their grill the food, marinate it, and then serve it. What we're going to have tonight is kind of my go-to venison recipe, which is olive oil, teriyaki sauce, and coarse ground black pepper. I think that, for my palate, that's a good flavor combination. Good venison steak needs very little additional seasoning for flavor. Your first tip of the night is don't worry about the gas. Get the grill going, get it good and hot. Clean grill grates are probably the most important thing in getting good sear marks and not having the food stick. And how do you get clean grill grates? It's by getting it super hot. hold one up. I'll hold the tray for you if you want.
Okay.
Let it drain a little and just pick a spot and slap it on there. Perfect. Just go ahead and get them all on. You always want airspace between the steaks, 1/2 inch to 1 inch. When you're cooking with steak, especially venison that you've harvested and prepared yourself, you have very little, I have very little concern for bacteria issues with that. I've seen that game from the field to my freezer to the counter. Proper thawing is important. Keep the meat at a temperature of 40-ish degrees, and that retards bacteria growth. But the good thing with steak and breasts and things like that is the only place bacteria can be is on the outside. So that's why we can get away with cooking steaks to 125, 130 degrees. The primary thing that we find is there is very little fat in wild game, so it's much leaner. And unfortunately, that's why many people have a bad experience cooking game, because if they try and cook it the same way as beef, and they might cook it longer or not marinate it with an oil, it can come out very dry and tough. However, when it's prepared properly, it can be some of the most tender meat around.
I think this one needs to be checked.
Okay, all right, who wants to do it? Anybody?
Come on, I was the cook. Somebody else has
All
to
right,
do it.
so just poke it right into the middle and see this is the probe part.
Yeah.
Tell us what you see.
150, 159.
So what is that?
52.
Overdone, right?
Yes.
All right.
Quickly. She's great.
You want
This
to check
one.
the other small?
This
okay.
one too.
Check that
it's
one.
pretty small and it's pretty high. 134.
That's good.
Yeah,
Get her. You need to use a meat thermometer to know when food is done. You will never get consistent results without a meat thermometer. When I started using one, consistency went through the roof. And then finally, when you take your food off the table, especially with most meat, it needs to rest 5 to 7 minutes before you cut it so that all the juices don't escape. Other than that, that's really, those are the key tips. All the meat tastes equally well. It's just a matter of how tender. So typically we use the hindquarters and what we call the back straps for steak. And then the front shoulders, front part of the animal, is typically used for jerky, roasts, slow cookers. It's just a tougher part of the animal. Do you agree?
Yeah, I usually grind up the front half. That's where hamburger goes. Hamburger comes from. I have not bought any beef since 1989.
Excellent. What we're going to try tonight is a recipe that I've actually grown very fond of using on salmon, and it's called Firecracker, and it's a firecracker marinade, and that one also uses a peanut oil, and then we mix in some balsamic vinegar, ginger, garlic, some shallots, and for the firecracker part of it, some crushed red peppers. Fish is a little tougher on the doneness. Mostly what I do is try and flake it near the backbone, and if it seems like it's going to pull off very easily and free from the bones, it's done. So I typically, if I had a thick salmon fillet, I'd probably mess with the thermometer, but these are not that way. So we got off with minimal stick, so that was pretty good on this side. You can see the skin kind of got charred, but the meat looks perfect underneath, so that skin is that protective coating. So the technique, which I feel like is a little bit out of style, at least in Wisconsin, but you lay the fillet on your plate and you just use your fork and you go from the backbone towards you, and if it's done enough, all the bones stay. You actually have a more bone-free fish than filleting sometimes, because I was filleting these and some of those bones are so small. You have that balance between wasting meat or making sure nobody gets a bone, and when you pull it off this way and it's thoroughly cooked, they just don't come with the meat. I find most people don't like the skin, or they just, in their mind, they don't think they like the skin. But if you look at how easy it is to take off, that way you can have the presentation of the skin on there, and if someone wants to take it off, they can go ahead and do that. Yeah. So with that, we can start serving some of this.
It doesn't have the eyes in it, does it?
Nope.
Not that easy.
Kind of looks like it.
Okay, I got my fish. You can see some of the bones right down in there. What you want to do is take that little tender piece of meat out. Try it.
Oh, Tim.
This is unbelievable.
Does it have good flavor?
Oh, I love that. Okay, so that was the one with the bone in.
Mm-hmm.
Now this one, do you eat the skin?
That's totally personal preference.
Personal preference. Okay, I'm gonna try just the
fillet.
flesh and see what we got in comparison to the other. Interesting. This one's more tender, a little drier, but still good. Flavor is still there.
I probably would take the blame. Those were super thin, and I probably overcooked them. That's why with the small fish, doing the whole fish is a little bit more foolproof.
Right, but it still tastes awesome.
What flavors are you tasting in
I
there?
don't know. It's like spicy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the firecracker.
Yep.
Got it.
That's the firecracker.
I like that. Now, I'm going to see if we can possibly put these recipes online or, you know, on the Outdoor Wisconsin website. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that would be great.
That way you guys can try it too. Cheers.
We'll post those recipes on the Outdoor Wisconsin Facebook page. You can learn more about this week's features there and on our website at milwaukeepbs.org. Just click on Outdoor Wisconsin. I'll be at FishX, Wisconsin's free fishing expo, February 9th through 11th at Washington County Fair Park in West Bend. Stop by our booth and say hello. Well, next time we'll join a group of kids with special needs in Port Washington for a fishing outing on Lake Michigan. And we'll look at an oak regeneration project in Richland County. Saying goodbye from Jackson Park in Milwaukee County, I'm Dan Small. Join us again next week for Outdoor Wisconsin.
Outdoor Wisconsin. When the work in life is way too much, you're in too deep, way out of touch. Lace up your boots, get out of town, walk in the wild, sit down and listen. Listen to the sounds of the critters of the night, to the wind and the leaves and the little river run. Coyote brother howling in the moonlight. Outdoor Wisconsin. Hike, fish, hunt, camp, sail, canoe, ski, photograph, laugh, do what you want to. Stick your nose where the wild rose grows. Outdoor Wisconsin. Outdoor Wisconsin.